Hey folks, welcome back. It's time to get back on the Z1-R, the fat swing arm modification project. That's what we're going to do in this video, is get to the next level. Now I'm not going to rehash what we've done so far. You can watch the other video. The link will be in the doobly-doo description down below. That explains the whole purpose, the objective, and what we did up to that point. And take it up from there. Because what we have to do in this video is we've got to calculate out approximately where the shocks are going to fall, the shock mounts, because we need to move those. Again, if you watch the other video, you see what I mean about that. And also, we're going to make sure that the wheel offset is going to be proper with that, those Morris mags. I do have all the parts in stock now for this. The 530 chain, 530 sprockets. I actually have two different sprockets for both the front sprocket and the rear, in case I needed to mix and match them to make the length proper. I'm going to try to keep the ratio exactly the same as it is right now, and that's one of the choices I have as far as the sprockets go. So anyway, that's what we're going to do, and hopefully this thing will measure up where the mag sits in the middle of the frame. May have to machine some spacers up. I do have some material I believe I can use for that, and also get it to the point where you can get this rear brake on take this rotor off, put it on the Morris mag. Obviously, we'll have the 530 sprocket on the Morris mag, and I got to take the sprocket cover off the motor to get at that sprocket, and we got to run that 530 chain from the front to the back, because again, that's going to be our main indicator. I mentioned this in the other video, as far as the straightness goes, for alignment of the rear wheel. That is everything. We can't move the motor, but we can move the wheel. Anyway, you watch the other video, you get the idea, but this is what we're going to do in this one. We gotta get it closer. We gotta get our numbers, write them down, and then report back to the customer what we estimate is the maximum size tire is going to be able to put on that rim, as far as the width goes in particular. And then we'll take it from there. So let me get started, and we'll come back at that point. Okay, folks. So skip ahead. About 2 hours took me to do all this, maybe 2.5. And as you can see, I've got the clutch cover off. Whoops, tripping over crap. Got the old sprocket off. Go over sprockets here in a second. And got the Morris mag on the back ready, or I should say lined up to the back, ready to go. So here's the deal here. First of all, as usual, if you watched the last video, you saw this as well. I couldn't get, where is it? I don't remember where the other one is. Oh, here it is. I couldn't get this one. I took this sprocket off because I was going to test it with that, see how it lined up before, to go over this hub. And the reason why was because of that stupid powder coating. So I took the hub off. It just pulls right out because there's like rubber dampers in here. But I had to press out each stud and then put it on the lathe. I put it in the 4-jaw, and then I indicated it in within about a thou and a half, which is the best I could get it, because I think this powder coating was uneven around that as well. I probably should have indicated the inside bore now that I think about it, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And just did a really quick skim cut on the lathe. And I mean, just took off the powder coat, and you just saw it touch the aluminum, at least on part of it. And then this fits really nice now. There might be, not even a thou of clearance on that. So we're good, because it's got to have some clearance to go over. It can't be the exact same size. So now it fits. So that, this powder coating sucks. I hate this stuff. It always screws stuff up. So, if they're going to do that, they need to accommodate for when they machine it. But, I guess that wouldn't be right either. So this is all on, and I've got the brake, the brake disc over here. Man, I'm tripping over crap. And this obviously is in poor condition, but while this is off the bike, I'm going to go ahead and send this disc up to Tommy at True Disc up in Michigan. We'll have them resurface this, and then when it comes back, I'll repaint the center. So it'll look brand new when we get it back. But for now, it's just for mock-up, of course. Now, the other problem we got is I was going to say the spindle. Yeah, the axle. I think this is the one to come off the Z1-R. It doesn't matter, because whatever's going to fit's going to fit if I put that back on. Nothing is the right length. So either they're too short or too long. These are the axles I have from the customer. So that one's a little too short, but for mock-up we can use it. The longest one we have is this. It's a double nutter. And it's It's quite long on both sides. I'm not going to use that one, but we could to remachine it, cut it down and rethread it. But I couldn't do this on my machine. I don't have a die for that, but if I get a new lathe, maybe I will. So yeah, anyway, that's what we're going to do with that. And yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to carefully get this in on that axle and then just kind of let it sit, and then we'll go over the sprocket thing and then run the chain and see how everything's going to line up. I should probably give you a kind of an overall shot of it first, so that gives you an idea what it would look like as far as the gold goes. He said he might leave them gold, so I don't know. It's not my deal, but I would like to see them black, to be honest with you, but I just don't think gold looks good with this, with the green. Yeah, I mean, with a black tire, of course, breaking that edge up a little bit, it might be different, but you know, I just do not like, I absolutely do not like leaving it gold, but that's just me. Anyway, so what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to get an idea what the spacing is going to be. And so I'm just going to do that by eye at first. Now I can look right down the back here and see that the rim is definitely pushed over to the right a little bit. And I put the appropriate sprocket on up there, and we can zoom up and you can kind of see it up there, I think, if I can get this thing to focus. There it is up there. If you can get an idea, it's going to be impossible for you to really see it too well on camera because these things are trying to focus on the closer object. But you get an idea that it's definitely to the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump it around a little bit and just get it lined up by eye. And I'm only doing that to make sure that these nuts are going to clear. If they don't clear, then we got another bigger problem. But I think they will. Depends on how far it needs to go over. Then I can kind of reach in there and do a classic reach around, try to get a measurement on a spacer. This thing comes with a number of spacers. Like this one might work actually right in this side. Got to accommodate. We're going to have to accommodate for a seal at a later time. There's no seals with this. But we'll figure that out when the time comes. Also, this spacer was probably more suitable for the other side. But this side's the important side. Everything's got to work off of the sprocket side because this has got to be lined up. There's just no two ways about it. So since I don't have the master link in the chain permanently, I don't have it in at all actually, we can just run the chain over and bring it back, and hell, just put it on with a couple wire ties or something, just to have it in place so we can get a straight shot down there and see when it's lined up. All right, so let me play with the spacers a little bit in the alignment, and then I'll bring you back. Okay, so I got the rear brake caliper on. I've got a spacer that came with it in there, plus a washer. Washer's on the inside of the mounting boss of the caliper. And I don't have it that tight yet, but you can see we do have a little drag on this side. I'll go into this here in a minute. The main objective here is to see how we line up. Now, instead of doing the chain, I'm going to use an old sidecars trick. As far as lining sidecars, I'm going to do the string method. So up here, I got the transmission in first, so it won't turn any further than it is. And I put a washer on the outside, run the string inside, and that washer won't let the string go through, obviously, and then bring the string back around, so the string is going to be very parallel with the face of this sprocket, which is just snug. It's not going to go in anymore, though. It's up against that spacer on the counter shaft. So all we have to do here is we got to bring this in where it just touches that face, like that. And then it's got to be touching this face here, parallel. So right now it's touching a little sooner. You see you got a little space toward the back. So that means we need to bump. No, it's a little too tight to do it. I need to loosen it up. We need to bump it around so it kind of goes this way. We want them both parallel. If we can get that string to line up where it goes face to face or flat to flat on both of them. There we go. Then we'll know that this thing lines up essentially with the spacers that we have in, which is a spacer and a washer on this side as well. So again, we're going to come over here, very similar to what we do with sidecars. When we line up things, I can do this with one hand. You do this and kind of push on it and see if it moves, which it does a little bit. So we're close. And we're right up against here. Let's see how we are back here now. So we're hitting about even. So if we kind of tie this off like this and come back over here so it's taut, now all we do is take a look and see this is real close. I think it needs a little bit more adjustment, and I think that washer needs to be about 10-20 thou thicker on that spacer, and with it tightened up. And I'll tighten it a lot more here in a second, but I need to get this lined up first, because again, this will do that same thing that you would be doing if you were lining your chain up by the marks and visually. And so we're essentially mimicking that without the chain, using a string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up a little bit more here and then see how it lays. Hey lady, lay. And then actually I want to make sure this is, see that there's a certain amount of range that this brake is going to have this way before it hits up here or hits down here. So we're going to have to get that happy medium, because we need to either utilize or make a new torque arm. Utilize the old one, I mean. I think we're going to have to make a new one. It may have to just come off the back here because of the shock. So I can make a new torque arm, I think. We'll figure that out. If I was going to do it, I'd make it out of aluminum, because that's what the original is made out of. Okay, the idiot is incorrect as usual. This is most definitely steel. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. They would make one out of aluminum for a torque arm because it has a lot of torque. But as you can see, whoops, oh, don't hit that. It's okay, folks, didn't hurt it. Let me see if I can get this back in with one hand. As you can see that this fits pretty good right there, but it's close to the, very close to the shock. So, you know, he's talked about putting different shocks on this, so I don't know if I want to modify this or just have him put new shocks on it or something, but we will have to come up with a way to mount it up here, weld something up there. I can even do a fat single out of, well, I can't use, yeah, this is steel, right? Yeah, we can do a fat single piece out of steel and weld it in real good and bring it up to about right there. So like use a half-inch piece of steel, or at least 3/8, you know, 10 mil, and then bring it up and just capture one side. That should be just fine as long as it's thick and it's welded well. Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. But back here, that works well, but again, we got a problem with that, so we'll have to see about that. Worst case scenario, this is ribbed for her pleasure, as you can see. So what we can do is I can put it on the mill and just mill that rib down right there and just give us a little clearance. That won't lessen the strength of this at all, you know, for what it's designed for. And then we'll have plenty of strength. If I do that, I could always put a piece on the back side of it to reinforce that spot inside this part of the recess between the ribs, and then that'll reinforce that. But that's the part that's closest to the spring, is this little rib. So, you know, we can come up with a way to do it. Just mill a 1 or 2 inch spot. I'm sorry, 25 or 50 mil spot, you know, lengthwise. Give it some clearance and then reinforce the back and it'll be just fine. Take it from there. So I'm going to try to get the happy medium here. Well, actually, that's doing that. I need to spin it independently of that. So it's about right there. It's where we want it for now. Let's tighten this up some more. That'll hold that in place for now. I got my metric adjustable wrench here, so it should work pretty good. All right, that's pretty tight. Now, I'll go into this here in a second, but the main objective here being the sprockets. And I can tell how far this would be off if it's that close, where I just add like 20 thou or so to the spacer, and that's going to dial that right in, I can almost guarantee it. So it needs to be pushed over just a little bit more. You can see that is just touching, maybe not quite touching this back side here too well, where you can actually move it. But it's very close, 10-20 thou. So what I do with that is then when I take this apart, I measure what the thickness of that spacer is, measure that washer I put in there is one of these. Well, actually, it was not one of these. These are junk. I pulled one out of my washer stack that was more precision washer, like a thrust washer. Maybe 2 in there, I can't remember. Measure those, add the appropriate amount, add it to that, and then you know, what I end up doing is come up with a maximum or a total size, and I'll just machine a new spacer for this side. Then that'll bring that one in perfect. If I don't know if I have that diameter stock. I just bought some aluminum down at Metal Supermarket, but I don't think I have that diameter. I was looking for some 2-inch, but they didn't have any in the drop section. So I'm gonna have to go back and look for it. Anyway, let's go back over here. Let's talk about the brake caliper now. Now, the problem I had on the original setup was, because this is not a floating caliper, you have to have this dead nut. So when this thing is tightened down, when this piston is essentially in the, actually the piston is, yeah, over here, in the retracted position. Is it dual piston? Yeah. So when these pistons or piston, doesn't matter, are in a retracted position or in a nominal position as far as their location goes, and a good way to do this would be to spread them out, you know, before you put this in and kind of look at it, which I'll do later. But you want these things to essentially be even. So with the pistons retracted all the way and the pads up against the pistons, you should be even. And the relationship between this and that is what does that. So if you need a spacer of a certain length to push it either further away or a little bit closer with a washer or something out here to the hub, that's what you need to do. But right now it's not bad being that tight where it's not dragging all that much, but you can see, now I don't know what the status of that piston is. I'm gonna have to push them both in and do this like I just described. But this is just a reference. So once I do that and I can eye these things in, if they're dead nuts even, I'll go, well, it's gonna be probably okay right there. But if not, then I'll make the appropriate adjustments calculation-wise and add, you know, 20, 30, 40 thou, whatever it is, or cut it off, whatever. And we'll make a new spacer for this side too. That's a step spacer, so no big deal. I'll just take the major diameter, get some stock, and turn that down, bore a hole, and we'll be good. So that's that. But let's take a look at it from the back and see how it lines up. Because this thing got to line up in the center of the rear of the bike. Now, one thing we can do is we can measure off the shocks, but these things are not really lined up all that well. And if we measure off the swing arm, that's not going to help us, because we wanted to see what it is in relationship with the frame. So I'm not really sure if there's a way we can actually do that accurately. Might have to just rely on by eye on this one. But yeah, that might be something we can do. Now, another thing we can do is we can take a known dimension at an angle, like here and there, and measure to a set spot on the rim. And if the thing is centered, the dimension at whatever angle you're measuring at, as long as you have the same reference on the rim, should be the same. So I can always do that off camera and see where we're at. I don't exactly know how I'm going to do that to pick it up, besides put a square across this and then use a little bit of marker and just put a little mark and then just measure to each one. As long as we're square to the rim, go across, then those will be consistent reference points, and then we'll measure up to the little armpit here on both sides and then see where it comes in. I've done that before and other stuff has worked pretty well, but the way it looks, it looks pretty darn straight or centered in that frame. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, let's talk about sprockets real quick. Now, we had a 630 chain, 630 sprockets on here. My instructions were to put a 530 on because allegedly a 530 chain is narrower, although I don't know if it is, and it'll be better clearance for a tire. And that's another thing we have to look at in here. So we definitely have to put the chain in at some point and then make measurements to the tire. But I need to make sure this thing's gonna fit in the first place. So that's secondary. That's irrelevant. It's not important, because if this doesn't fit, then the hell with it. So what we're gonna do is, what was I saying? Oh yeah, sprockets. So the 630 chain and 630 sprockets, to go to a 530, you can go and do an online calculation, a calculator rather, which I did it two ways. The instructions on Z1 and a couple of different websites like Dime City, that's one of their companies, is to take the current number of, I was gonna say spokes, shit. The current number of teeth of the sprocket you're looking at to convert. And you divide it by 5, and then you multiply times 6. So in this case, if you were going to use a known or an existing sprocket, and you want to keep the same ratio, basically, you have to kind of do, I think it's better off to do the actual ratio calculation itself, which is what I just did a little while ago. So what I calculated this out to be, all right, with a 530 chain, I got a 17 front and a 40 rear. If I was going to duplicate what was in there, I calculated out that I need a 42 rear with a 17 front, counter sprocket. And the reason why I chose those numbers was I went off the parts fish. Parts fish shows it as I think it's a 15 and a 33. Yeah, there it is. There's stock, 15 and 33. So that's 2.2 to 1 as far as the ratio goes on a stock. In my 1740 with the 530 sprockets, it's 235 to 1. And the current setup that was on there is actually 245 or almost 250 to 1. So that was the lowest ratio that was on there because it had a larger rear sprocket. So if really to match that up, I'm going to have to change that out to a 42. But if you're going to match it up to stock, with stock being 2.21, we're at 2.35, and we were at 2.47 or 45 or something like that. I think that's a really good middle ground right here because stock's too high in my opinion, and I think that's a little low. So I think we're going to keep it at 235, which is the 530, 17, and 40 as you see it right now. So I just used an online sprocket calculator I found on using the Google machine, plus information from Z1 and them. And yeah, so that's what I did. And I know you saw my address on there, but you already knew that anyway because my business information is published from here to Pluto, so I guess that doesn't matter. So anyway, yeah, this looks pretty good. I'm liking it. I just was really concerned that lining up this sprocket would make this either one side or the other. But I figured it was engineered to accommodate that. And this sprocket does not have a step and a shoulder or a recess on either side, so this is the side. The inside's the same as this side, so that's a good reference. However, this one does. Okay, this one has a step in it, so and you can kind of see it over here. You see that relief in there? So I just kind of like the look of this, and I wanted to try it this way first, but I don't think there's a right and a wrong way to put that on there, because I just don't. But if we were to flip it around, that should bring this out a little bit more. Maybe we wouldn't necessarily need the spacer in there, but I don't know, I kind of like it this way, so I think that's what we're going to do. And I honestly don't know if this is supposed to be out or in. I'm not sure. I think it's that way so you can line things up better. But then again, the sprocket count and part number and so forth is on the inside, so why would you want that facing out? I mean, it'd be kind of an eyesore. So I think we're going to leave it like this. It looks better. And yeah, and that way we can just customize the spacers as I described before. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think it's looking pretty good. So finally on a torque arm deal, I'll just revisit that a little bit. Like I said, we're going to have to weld on something here on the frame to do that, to capture that. And probably going to, I know I have to move these outboard a little bit. Okay, the way these shocks are right now, they're actually angled in a little bit. Kind of hard to see because it's subtle, but these are not far enough out. So they need to be a little straighter up and down, thusly they need to go out relative to the top. So the problem with this, of course, is I need to cut these off and then reuse them. But what I also ordered was this. I ordered some shock mounts. I haven't tested them as far as the spread goes, but that looks like it'll probably fit pretty well. And I'm probably going to use these because they're a hell of a lot more beefy than these damn things. I mean, that's pretty skimpy. And that's 16th, maybe 70 thou. What's probably, I don't know if it's metric or not, but these guys, damn, that's 3/16 at least, you know. So that's probably what, 6 mil, 7 mil almost, or a, you know, maybe 5 mil. I don't know, but they're thicker. We'll probably end up using those. That way we can put them off to the edge a little bit further and have a little bit more strength when they're welded. and we'll weld them the same way. We'll weld them around. Of course, these only have a very little bit of weld underneath them if you look at it from the top. I'm going to put a nice bead in there, a nice like a gusset weld, and then on this side we'll do it nice as well. But I think that this is going to be a lot better for that. That's why I got them. You can plug weld these too, but this is going to be hanging off the side, so you know, why bother? So anyway, yeah, that's what I think we're going to do with that. That's about all the time I got for you on this one, so we're going to go ahead and close this one out. Leave a comment what you think about the gold. Let me give you another good shot of it here. I honestly do not like, I'm not trying to sway you or anything, but I do not like that gold with the green. I absolutely do not like that. I think that looks ghetto. The best word I can come up with is ghetto. Now, it might look better with some tires on it. I don't know, but I absolutely do not like the gold. It's ghetto. Ugh, terrible. Those things need to be black, or I don't know, black with some highlights on them or something, kind of like the stock ones are. I don't know, but I don't like the gold at all. Let me know what you think. And the next steps are going to be, of course, doing some more measuring to see what kind of tire he can fit with the chain in place, as I described before. Who's pinging me? And then we'll be able to give him some recommendations on that. And then once we come up with a tire estimation, we'll have to get a tire put on him. I would say do that before if he's going to have these repowder coated, certainly, so they don't get all dinged up, because I got more, you know, more mock-up to do. Then you can have that tire doffed, okay? And then we can have that put back on after they're powder coated. But, you know, the thing is, without a tire, I can't really 100% prove it out. As far as all the spacing, I can do, or the clearances, I can do all the spacing, make sure the brake is aligned properly as I described before, do the torque arm, redo the shock mounts, things like that, and then have all that done, because this will have to go out for, I'd rather paint it, to be honest with you, in-house. I'll try to convince him to do that, or he's going to have a powder coated, I don't know. But yeah, I absolutely do not like the gold. You know, I think I said that before. Kind of like Mortsky with his Kragers, flexi hose, and white walls. I don't like the gold. Anyway, you know what to do. Leave a comment. As I said before, subscribe, ring the bell, like the video, share. It doesn't cost you a cent, and it helps me out immensely. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.